So welcome to part 2 of the PAM prevention lab demo. I kind of discussed what we're doing and laid the groundwork before. Um, Pardon that. Word is being a little difficult. Uh, what we're going to do here, before I'm going to just talk through it and then do it. What we're going to do here is add a test user. I'm going to actually use the sudo add, the user add and password commands. Ideally, really and truly, if you're trying to create a real user, it would actually be better to use the add user command, because the add user command will create a home directory for that user and prompt you for a password, whereas user add all by itself with no options sometimes won't. In this particular case, we're not trying to create a real user, so it doesn't matter that because we're creating this user for the purpose of making sure that he can't SSH into the system, and that's what we're going to do second. So I've already done step 2. Part 3. I was in the previous video. I got into the Ubuntu desktop VM. I used the GUI package management system to find and install the PuTTY SSH client. I SSH'd into the server. I didn't do who am I, but I was obviously me. So, and actually, what I can actually do is this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Ubuntu server. I'm going to kind of skip to step 4. I'm going to edit the pam.d/sshd file to create a user denial for my test user account. I'm going to create a denied users account, put my test user in it, set some permissions. Notice what I'm doing here, the chmod 600. What that does is give root read-write access on that file and deny all access for everyone else, including other members of the root group. And then we're going to test it. PAM is PAM is the pluggable authentication modules. And for different services that you have on the system, you can have different PAM settings. So say, for example, you want one set of users to be able to SSH into the system, and perhaps a different set of users to do other things. I don't know, FTP files to the system, or use a database software on the system. Maybe you have different ways of logging into the system, and some of them will work for some users, and some of them will work for others users. So this is what we're going to do. So let me drag this over. I'm going to, on my server, I'm going to do sudo user add test user. Boom. And okay, the next thing I'm going to do is do a sudo password command for the user. So sudo passwd test user. Okay, so I created the password. So now what I can do is try to SSH in as this new user that I just created. And I'm going to exit. And now I'm going to go to PuTTY again. And before, what I'm doing, this time when I do PuTTY again, I think I'm going to go ahead and make certain that this is not going to be blindingly small. Because that text was tiny. Let's see. Fonts. Good grief. Terminal. Window. Okay. So it's 80 by 24. This will give me some more scroll back options. Not perfect, but let's see. Behavior, translation, selection, colors, fonts. You know what? Okay. I think I'm just going to have to deal with the fact that this is going to be some itty bitty text. Okay, actually, okay. 182.168. You know what? Yeah, 31.131. Open. And let me see if I can't make this much, much bigger. Besides, okay. So, test user. Okay. Notice what happened here is that, and hopefully this is more visible, this happened, this could not chdir, change directory to home directory, home/test user, because it doesn't exist, because I used the old-fashioned user add command. What the add user command does, in addition to also setting the password and allowing you to set a room number and a username and all of that, what the user add command does is take there's a file, so really a directory called etsy/skel, SKEL, which is a template, shall we say, for new users, so that every new user gets a home directory, and then the system goes and grabs the contents of that Etsy Skel directory and drops it in. So everybody starts with their own home directory, their own .bashrc file, their own bash history file that the system can write command history into. Right now, this user, it's like I said, it's okay because we're not really going to do anything with this user. But if this was a real user, I would have to jump through some hoops to build a directory for him. So let's do pwd. See, who am I? Test user. Let's do groups. So I have a group with my name in it, and I'm not in any other groups, which is probably not okay for the kind of for a normal user. So actually, let me illustrate the other side of this coin. This is me again. Let's look at all the groups that I'm in. I'm in the ADM group, the CD-ROM group, the sudo group, the plugdev group, the Samba share group, the LP admin group. This an actual useful user is going to need to be in these groups, so I can do things like, I don't know, plug a CD in and listen to it. So what I'm going to do now that I've created this user. Actually, and let me, that was kind of, I realized, oops, that was the wrong place to run this command. Okay, see, even so, even on the server, I'm in the CD-ROM group and the plugdev group and some other things, so that if I need to do other things as a real and true user, I could do so. See, I've got a bash, like for right now, if I were to do things as test user, that history would just disappear because the system has no .bash history file to write into when I close that terminal. So now, because I've got this test user who's really, who does me no good, and from a certain point of view, every user you have on a system who doesn't actually need that system at that moment poses a security risk. If no one knows the users are there, that risk is minimal. But a very clever attacker may be able to, through lateral movement and social engineering and actual literal dumpster diving, may be able to figure out, oh, hey, a person with this username used to be a sysadmin for this company. What if they forgot to turn his access off? This is something you always want to do, particularly for administrative for support staff and administrative roles with anything resembling system control. If they leave their role, if they leave the company, even if they're on a mandatory vacation or a job rotation, shut that access down. Close it down so that if someone learns about it, they can't break in. If they get mad at you and give someone their access and say, hey, their personnel policy is all kinds of backwards, and oh, by the way, I happen to know these 5 passwords that belong to people who used to work for the company and no one ever turned them off, and they fired me and I want to get back at them, so if he doesn't use the information himself, he may hand it to someone who does. Um, beware the malicious insider. Beware the disgruntled employee. Always turn off everything you don't need. The principle of least privilege applies to literally everyone and literally everything. Okay, so that was a digression into the Sec Plus course. Let's get back to the lab. So what I'm going to do is here, I'm going to sudo PIM, and I'm actually doing this here. I could theoretically do this from my SSH server because I'm using this to lock out the test user, not me. But as we saw, okay, you know what? Let's try this again. SSH, SSH 192.168.1.31.131. Yes. Interestingly enough, I'm generating a new SSH key because I'm making a new connection, because PuTTY got one fingerprint and the SSH command line program is getting a different one. Okay, so here I am. More I got everything I want and more space. So let's do sudo pim etc pamd sshd. And here we go. Here's the PAM file. So what I am going to do is I'm going to find, scroll to the bottom and the following lines. As we can see, this is not a very long file. Shift I, Shift I. And I'm going to pause this while I type. Okay, so what I have done is create an authorization requirement using the PAM list file executable, the .so file that indicates that this is a source object file, basically a compiled binary program. And for users on error, note that it succeeds. You're going to deny on the basis of the contents of this etc ssh denied users list. Now, there's nothing in that right now. So if I were to save this, restart the PAM service, try test user again, it should work because that user's list is empty. So I'm going to escape::wq because of course that's save and quit in VIM. Now I'm going to create a file called etc ssh denied users by doing sudo vim etc ssh denied. Now, now there's a possibility if I hadn't created this file and tried to make it work, that might cause an error. So what I'm going to do is do this. So I've got this file, and I'm going to do test. I'm going to shift I test user. Escape::Q. Now the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to change mode to give root only read-write access to this file, so no one else can change it. So sudo chmod, and actually let me go into this. So see, I've got this denied users. Right now, denied users, everybody's got read access to this thing. So if I were to turn this mode block here, actually let me do this. The mode block for denied users right now is 644, and that's not what I want. So I'll do sudo change mode 600 denied users. Boom. So now let me do that again. See, now only root can read and write to it. Now, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to pause because I'm about at the end of the video. In the next video, I'll actually test this solution. I'm going to go to my Ubuntu desktop and see if I can SSH. Be right back.